Welcome to the seminar of the Social Sciences Division. Our speakers for today, actually we have two speakers who really need no introduction. They are both economists and have been part in the history of this division. They were our former division heads in separate occasions. Dr. Randolph Barker was the first division head of the then Department of Agricultural Economics from 1960s. Second, I'm sorry.
After LUZON.
Because it was stated, it was mentioned at the IRRI Bulletin, the first, so we should correct that.
Don't believe what you read in the IRRI Bulletin or rice. We're still rice today.
Okay.
Don't believe it.
Anyway, the second division head from 1967 to 1978. He also served as an acting division head in 2007 until Dr. Sam Mohanty came in 2008. After IRRI, Dr. Barker became Professor of Agricultural Economics at Cornell University, served as the IITA Board of Trustees, interim DG and Principal Scientist of IMI, and now Professor Emeritus at Cornell University. And David. Sorry. Dr. Cristina David was a research assistant of Dr. Barker, completed her PhD in economics at Stanford University, became the first chair of the Department of Agricultural Economics at QPL, Department of Economics. Thank you. Then an agricultural economist and later as acting division head from 1983 to 1992 at IRRI. After IRRI, Dr. David joined the Philippine Institute for Development Studies as Senior Research Fellow and performed a number of consulting assignments here in the Philippines and elsewhere in the world. For most of their professional careers, as we know, they have been involved in teaching and conducting research on issues related to agricultural and rural development in Asia. Until now, they still have that passion of doing research for agricultural and rural development. So this morning, they are going to talk about what is new in Central Luzon. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Randy Barker and Dr. Tina David.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Now, I want to first of all recognize Bruce Tolentino, who's on his first day here at IRRI as your DGG what?
They say communications and partnerships.
Okay, communications partnership, and one of the problems in this place is the lack of communication. We'll talk about that. Why are we giving you this seminar? The reason is we want you to know what we're doing. Because one of the hardest things in this, and we sent you, how many of you brought your, only one or two? I sent you an email this morning with a trip report. And I want to start with trip reports because you can go back if you want to know what we talked about and what's important to each of you. It's in the trip report. How many of you have done a trip report in the last 6 months?
Pag-trip in the last 6 months. Pag-trip in the last 6 months.
Let me tell you, two of you have done a trip report. Okay, look, it's harder than heck to know what people are doing in this place. And it's not just it's not just the other division, that's okay. But even in SSD, I know I can look at people around here and I know don't know what they're doing. I know, but you don't, because I've been around and asking them. And here's Sam.
What did
I
I
just
do?
introduced you to people, Sam. Our DGG. You know, the other thing is I have to also recognize our alumni. The only Cordova was there. Are you the only one that's a yearly alumni?
Yeah.
The others didn't make it, you know. I mean, if you want to know what's going on in Iloilo, I guess now, we talked to Yogi. She worked for us for a long time. Ave Mandak is out here. If you want to know about anything about what do you call it, yield gap, Ave Mandak has done all the things in yield gap back in the 1970s that people are now rediscovering here in some of the work that they're doing. Okay, now, as I say, the reason we are giving this not only to give you information, but to tell you that trip reports are important for a way of letting us know what you're doing. And if you look at the trip report, you don't have to read. You see, somewhere down the line, I say this is important for so-and-so. Rod, you look at this, because I know you're interested in alternate wetting and drying. Where's Rod? Is he there? Not here. Okay.
Randy, maybe you can tell that we're going to resend a revised one.
Yeah,
Because I was
because,
late in,
yeah, because she's complaining about what I wrote. I sent her an email, and not a month ago, but a week ago, and said, would you kindly revise it? Last night, she sent me an email, which I didn't get, and haven't seen yet. So she can tell you when I say something that is wrong. So that's part of the way we're operating. The important thing is, the trip report helps you and it helps Sam to understand, well, what are you guys doing, you know? And when you write a trip report, our reason for going to Central Zone has to do with water management. But if I see something on hybrid rice, I send it to Simon Ziggy or someone like that, because I know he may not know what is going on and what I discovered about hybrid rice in Central Zone. So when we go to Central Zone, I go with an open book. Yes, I want to know about water management. Yes, I go to, but all of a sudden I discover, well, we should really understand something about this, or somebody's interested in that. And everybody here, when you first hire people, and I've talked to Dr. Finger, you need a month of orientation. A new person, Val, needs a month of orientation. Where are you, Val? Yeah. So, you don't send them to India. First of all, you have a month where you have intensive, what's Erie about? And you spend 1 week in that month in Central Luzon, because the issues in Central Luzon are broad enough that if you understand what's going on in Central Luzon, it will help you in Eastern India. I mean, and you remember there was a lady called Hua here. Is Gurley here? Where was that? Anyway, so last year, Hua was sitting in the steps, and I said to Hua, I always, when I see somebody, I say, well, who are you? And what do you do? And she said, well, I'm, and where are you from? She said, well, my name is Hua, and I'm from Missouri. I said, you don't look like you come from Missouri. And she said, no, I'm working with a guy called Willie Myers. Willie Myers. You know Willie Myers? Tina?
yes,
Oh, you're reading the report.
we were
Okay.
together here.
Yeah, so Tina and Willie and I, the three of us, ran this department for a number of years, right? Huh?
I just did my master's thesis here.
Yeah, and Willie
At the
did
same
his
time.
master's thesis here. So we did the same thing. We're all there at the same time. And you can see in the thesis we get a product. And we need products these days. So we need product, right? That's what it's all about. All right, so, but then I said to Hua, would you like to know what's going on out in the experiments. Oh yeah, I like that. So I got Tom to arrange to take him out and show him what was going on. And then I said, would you like to meet a farmer? Oh, I like that. So I got Girlie to take her to Central Luzon. And she came back, I'd gone by then, and she wrote, gee, that was really interesting. In fact, making that trip will improve my modeling. And so it's really important, I think, that this department get into the field periodically, because your task in part is to feed that information to the other disciplines who don't go in the field. Because you know what's going on. You should know what's going on in the farm level. You should know what farmers think about, say, hybrid rice or this or that, to feed back to the people in the other disciplines who aren't here today, but and so forth, what they're going on. So I'm doing a little preaching because I get worried about the fact that everybody here is in a silo. In Cornell, the silos are disciplines. In IRRI and in the CG system, the silos are projects. You're in a project. You don't know what this guy's project. I mean, because that's my project and so forth. So one of the problems you have to do is break down this barrier between projects, because there's so many things that you can find out by talking to the other people about your research and so forth like that. And one thing I'll say also is that I see Adam sitting there and staring at me, that there's one thing that's kind of unique about this building. And in the early days, it was easy to do interdisciplinary stuff because, there was only one economist. There was only one of almost everything except 2 or 3 plant breeders. So when you had coffee in the morning, you had coffee. You couldn't talk about economics. Now the place is big. And what's interesting about this building is that a lot of people don't know exactly who's doing what, but at least in the GIS, you have coffee every day. Together. There's a table down there that makes it easy for these guys, and I even joined the coffee because it's next to my office. So I can get coffee there and meet with Alice and so I don't know how you rearrange the thing, so forth, but I just call it, these are just things that I'm thinking about, and once you're emeritus, once you're over 80, you take what I say with a grain of salt. After all, sort of like that. But anyway, I want to point out that. Now, let's go to the trip. And here we're going to talk about Central Luzon. Now,
Pointed.
Anyway, I thought I knew Central Luzon until I saw this Aurora. And then last night I had dinner with Highland Montauk, who's just written a report to the governor on the future of Aurora, or something like that. It's really, really interesting. Kind of hanging out there. Anyway, so we went first to Tarlac, and we'll talk quite a bit about what we've been doing in Tarlac. It's a very interesting story. Then we went over to what's called Science City, Munoz. How many of you have been to Munoz? Who should we have been to Munoz? Good. Okay, so we spent a couple of days here in Science City doing different things and so forth, like that. And so that's basically 3 days, Tarlac and where does the, sorry, so the different agencies here. In
Excuse me, Randy, perhaps we can say something about we're trying to develop this project, that's why we went.
yeah, okay, why don't you go ahead?
I mean, just to give you a background of why we went to Center Luzon. Okay, a group of us are trying to develop this coordinated irrigation research program that will have 5 to 6 components. One is the private sector irrigation development, which is basically pumps. Second are the surface irrigation systems under NIA, basically governance issues with respect to NIS systems. Thirdly, part also of the NIS governance issue, but will be a separate project, will be irrigators associations, both of NIS, natural irrigation systems, and communal irrigation systems. Then environmental issues related to surface irrigation and groundwater. And fifthly, there will be a project analyzing the impact of different types of irrigation on productivity and income, as well as constraints to adoption of water-saving technologies. Actually, this is, we plan to conduct this research program in a decentralized way, and the identification of projects is partly based on how we think the people will be grouped most efficiently. We want to make it decentralized so that the responsibility and funding will go directly to each one. So we're very pleased actually that we have been able to get the interest of the people we want to be in this project, including of course the participation of IRRI, like Paimoya, Keika Chisa, and former IRRI people like Masa Kikuchi, even IRRI-Social, and so on. And I think I'm very pleased that Feed Rice will have a strong presence. They have a first-rate group led by Lord and Lisa Bode. And so it is an opportunity for us to work with them in there. You know, it's a very important phase because you really have a good group, and it's nice for them to be able to work with more senior people. And I think, so I'm very, very pleased with how the planning is going. Randy and I have done 3 trips. Okay, one in Cagayan and Isabela to look at what Kay is doing on water pricing, as well as also ask questions about our own interest on pumps and irrigators associations. Second, we went to visit the irrigation system in Pangasinan, which is the site of a study by Mona de los Reyes. She's a PhD candidate from what is called IRRI in Netherlands, in Delft. Okay, so she's doing work on rehabilitation.
This is beyond Santa Cruz.
Beyond Santa Cruz, siya in Pagsanhan. Okay. It's very interesting, and our next visit will be in Tugua. I think to visit the rice village, rice village. And then the third is this, in Nueva Ecija. So our purpose is really to to visit FellowPhilippine and get the participation of the economists, as well as also meet with Don Blasco and Jim Hare. And in the process, we thought that we should visit our lab because this is the study site on a study on pumps by Sherin Launio of FellowPhilippine. So I thought that on the way to Muñoz, let us spend a day in Tarlac. So maybe the second day we spent with FellowPhilippine and visited CLSU as well, because we're also going to bring in a couple of economists from there that I have worked with before, as well as visited Water Resource Management Center. And the third half day, we visited irrigators associations around Muñoz. Okay, and then go back to the
Let me go back a little further back. When did you start getting interested?
Okay. The reason why I got interested in irrigation is I've never worked in irrigation. But 2 or 3 years ago, I had a major project called Monitoring and Evaluation of Agricultural Policy, where we estimated producer support estimates from 1960 to 2008, which brings together our work and integrate, okay, the estimation of the impact of pricing policies with the resource transfers that occurs through the public investments in different policy instruments. And since irrigation is perhaps is actually the topmost number one item of public expenditures, we've got to collect a lot of data on public expenditures by projects, not only that, performance indicators by systems, and it turned out that media has a wealth of data that they're so willing to share. They're in soft copies, and so we're able to gather this, and of course, Masa heard about this, and therefore, after he retired, expressed interest in coming over and working with us on this area. That is why, for me, this is a new topic, but I think it's very important, very exciting, and it gives us an opportunity to work with younger economists, because if we really want to make, I feel, that's why I actually disagreed a lot with Ron, that in order to make an impact on policies, you really need to have Filipinos, knowledgeable in these topics. And I tell you, there is no economist really who can participate in policy discussions with regards to irrigation. And therefore, this is an opportunity for us to bring along the younger group. An opportunity also very critical is for us to be able to work with irrigation engineers on this. And don't believe that it was all easy doing multidisciplinary work. I never did it when I was at IRRI. I have to admit. But after I left IRRI and had to, because of my own interest in rice and in water and irrigation, I really actually did multidisciplinary work after I left IRRI. And so that is the origin of our interest.
Well, my interest starts in 1966. I guess a lot of you weren't born then. In 1966, I joined the area and I worked with a guy called an engineer. I was interested in water management for one reason, and that is that the the engineering department at IRRI had been bought out by USA to work on mechanization. And we at IRRI, including Bob Hurt later, felt that mechanization was a good private sector activity. It really wasn't so important at IRRI. But the water was. Lloyd Johnson was one of the, I've had better luck with engineers than I had with, say, agronomists. Because they take a look at, agronomists have, that's when you know something about agronomists. The engineers think more in the way that an economist would think. And I learned my agronomy in water management from Lloyd Johnson. Lloyd Johnson also started us into the loop survey. The other person that was important at this time was a guy called Joe Levine. Tony, was he your advisor? Gil Levine?
No.
Gil Levine? No. Your advisor was Mike? Or?
Mike was.
Yeah, okay. But Gil was in the same department, except he retired several times. But anyway, Gil Levine, he's older than me, but you see, when I leave here, you wonder how I keep in touch. He's an engineer, and he challenges everything that we say. And he's back at Cornell, and we meet together twice a week. So I'm able to keep in touch with, his thinking and so forth. And we're just not trying to push the Philippines, because I'm concerned about what India is doing or not doing. I went to a meeting last week in FAO meeting in Bangkok. And we concluded that there were three things that we need. The conclusion was, number one, capacity building, training people. We've lost a whole generation of people interested in water. Because back in the 60s and 70s, I had grad students that were doing, funded by USA, funded by AWD, funded by everything. All that money dried up. And so there's very little interest today. And, if you want to get a project today in the US, there are three words that are important. Sustainability, global climate change.
Did we get any award in this?
Okay? We have those three, and you're pretty well.
It's not public?
But water is not one. Even though we have a water problem, we have it out. So I've concentrated really in much of my life on trying to. I spent 9 years in India, international water management. I spent 13, 14 years here. So basically my career has been trying to promote interest in water management and better water management. And by nature, it's a very complicated interdisciplinary topic. You can't deal with what is seen and same. You have to have a discipline that kind of determines what to do. Okay, so that's some of the background of why we got interested. And the bottom line is irrigation and water management. Without irrigation and water management, water resource, there would be no green revolution. You see, it's not just about varieties and fertilizer and so forth, but water is the key. And one of the things that I will mention in our trip is that we went to Division 5 of the Reaper system. We spent just an hour or two talking to the irrigation system. What impressed me about Division 5, these farmers have been rain-fed farmers until recently. All of a sudden, because they extended the countermountain dams, they got additional water, they were irrigating, they're going to irrigate another 30,000 hectares. If you want to know the impact of the green revolution, you go up to Division 5, because all of a sudden, these guys who are rain-fed and poor have water, and they're growing, and they've got TVs in their house and other things like that, which is what was happening early on in Central Luzon. Now, the first question you ask in Central Luzon, if you visit a farmer, what's the first question you ask? Do you have a relative overseas? are you getting remittances? I see you've got a nice house here. It doesn't come from rice, it's because somebody, you know, you gotta be so, you know, you smile. Let's go to Carla. You people are so sober. Maybe I just don't, my jokes are, anyway, Tina, Carla.
He told me I'm not supposed to speak. You know, I chose, you know, for us to look at Tarlac because Tarlac, it really has, it's only second to Ilocos Sur in terms of density of use of pumps. So I have some numbers here. That's the thing. There are very few data actually in pump use. But we made estimates based on the 2002 agricultural census. Then secondly, in 2009, BAS Rice Survey asked for, as I would say, is this parcel irrigated or not? They asked, is it under NIS or CIS or pumps? So for 2009, we have some data on irrigated area by source of irrigation. And Tarlac is really second only to Ilocos Sur, and that means, and I have a number here, about 76% of irrigated area is irrigated by pumps. So high, it's 84% in Ilocos Sur. So it's very, here, Tarlac farmers using pumps constituted 78 of farms with irrigation. It's even higher in the 2009 PAS. And at least 90% of these farmers purchase their pumps without any subsidies. So it's all private. Okay. Of course, in contrast, I'm sure many of you also know, that when it comes to national irrigation systems, then about 90%, at least 90% of estimated cost of irrigation service is really shouldered by the government. Okay. It's only the cost of operation and maintenance through the collection of irrigation service fee, okay, that is paid for by farmers. And that constitutes less than 10% of the total estimated cost. So very heavily subsidized, whereas when it comes to pumps, it is basically farmers. And here I was interested in particular because first Phil Rice has an outgoing study on deep well pumps, okay, some deep well pumps. And I was really interested in this because I was very worried that the government is going to invest in what is called balon-balon dam project. That from what I have read in different places, it's not really economically viable. Okay, so I really wanted to see what it means. But it's very interesting, no? The whole story of Tarlac, okay, started really with the Mount Pinatubo eruption. There used to be like 3 national irrigation systems here, surface irrigation systems. But with the eruption of Mount Pinatubo, all the 3 dams collapsed, okay, and only one was rebuilt. So the government had to do something. Okay. It borrowed from Japan to revitalize their deep well pumps. So they had 72 pumps, deep well pumps. Only 15 are now operational. Okay. So that was, I think, built in the mid-1990s. Only 15 are operational. The rest are really only partially operational, not operational. and in fact going to be taken over by the extension of the Kasekman project. Okay, what he said as Division 5 is the Kasekman Phase 1 project, and the second phase has already been approved that will extend the Ukris area down to Tarlac. Okay. So, but it's really now mostly shallow children. But what I'm so new to this, so it was very interesting for me. We visited also La Paz. La Paz is the municipality just after you get off the SFX. Their major problem in Tarlac is flooding, because it is the catch basin of the Zambales Mountains and the Medicina Mountains here. So, in fact, the rice area during the wet season is less than the rice area in the dry season. So, major problem. So there, sort of a lot of, policy questions here.
Yeah.
The policy question is that, should we really invest in the Balog Dam, okay, costing about 16 billion? Okay. What it will do is to replace the shallow childrens. So the question, so one really has to make very good estimation of social rates of returns. One has to analyze the sustainability of the shallow children in those areas. And so to me, it's very clear that Tarlac, aside from being the hometown of our president, okay, is analytically actually also very important. And in our project, we have with us Dr. Glenn Tavios, who's the head of the National Hydraulic Center at UP Diliman. They have done, sort of, what do you call it? Hydrogeological modeling, okay, of San Roque Dam in Pangasinan, Laguna Lake, and also the Pampanga River Basin. And so we, with that kind of information and analysis, I think we can say something about the issue of Balog and whether the government should go ahead and invest in this. Because the foreign funders already sort of written it off.
Okay, so let me.
That's what we did in Tarlac.
Yeah, well, a couple of points. One is the farmers in the NIA are all in favor of this $1,000. The farmers, because it costs them less, the cost will be shifted to the public system, and they don't have to buy diesel fuel with the price going up and stuff like that. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that there's a lot of interest in IRRI in this area in something called AWD. Kay, are they doing AWD in Bahoy?
Not really.
What?
Not.
I think somebody has been sold to go down there and try to
Yeah, it's a
promote
post
AWD. Okay, now, here's the problem. Alternate wetting and drying is a practice where you just submerge instead of flood the field. It requires that you, in the way that alternate wetting and drying does, is just before flowering, you'll actually even crack the soil. But in order to do alternate wetting and drying, you have to have command of water, which a pump will give you. You cannot do alternate wetting and drying in the surface irrigation system because they're supply driven, not demand driven. And so everybody knows Vas Bauman in Tarlac because we've been promoting alternate wetting and drying. But my question, you see, I also have a note here for Rod, who's not here, because he's interested in alternate lighting. He's supposed to be doing an impact assessment of alternate lighting. I don't know if he's familiar with it or not. But anyway, in this whole question of alternate wetting and drying is to save water. And my question for Baz is, in this particular, usually we're talking about, alternate wetting and drying, let's say K was involved in the Zhanhe system in China. Alternate wetting and drying, you were shifting water to non-agricultural uses. Now in Tarlac, alternate wetting and drying, what are you doing with the water you save? I don't know. Are we just saving the water? Because farmers will adopt alternate wetting and drying, not to save water, but to save the cost of the diesel fuel. That's why they do alternate wetting. It has nothing to do with saving water, which is what this bill has. So that's the end of Tarlac.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
As you said that you don't know what the farmers were doing with the saved water. From our experience in Tarlac, actually the water saved were used for domestic consumption.
For domestic consumption.
Yes. And also for including laundry and so forth.
Yeah.
Because before the women were fetching water for
Okay. I didn't know that.
far from walking for 30 minutes, imagine in Tarlac, in Canary, in Victoria.
You
But
see,
because of AWD, then their water is just in their house, and at the same time they can have business on their own. Say the sari-sari store and so forth.
okay, I didn't know that, and of course I wouldn't have known it if we didn't have a seminar to discuss these sort of things.
No, and let me ask, I'm not so sure I understand. Okay. Did they save water from because they were using pumps or they were using from the canal?
Actually, it's a deep well pump.
In the well?
Yes. So they have a cooperative. So because of the less consumption of water, so and the mayor also installed the tank for domestic consumption.
But it's really interesting, you mentioned deep well pumps.
No, actually, in that deep well pump, there's side by side, there's a water connection that lead to the house.
I see.
So aside from the irrigation.
But was
So, but is water scarce?
Mm,
I mean, so you say,
Yes.
but when you say, what it does is when you waste water, what it does is
Just
it sits.
Yes.
Okay. And then you can pump it out. So that's what he meant, I think, but
Yeah, but
you mean to say there's not enough water. If they did not practice AWD, there wouldn't be enough water for domestic use.
Yes, definitely. And aside from that, the impact was on the increase of rice cultivated area, because the tail end they were not able to grow rice.
yeah, that should be.
But because
Yeah,
of
that should
That
AWD,
makes sense to me. That makes sense. Now, let's go back to the deep well pumps. It's interesting, the deep well pumps. We visited deep well pumps, and they're servicing less,
going out of
fewer
business.
and fewer, they're obsolete. And we find the deep well pumps that, there are, let's say 20 farmers, 10 are in the deep well pumps, and 10 have gone and bought their own roller pump because they can't afford the price of the deep well pump. And they have their own shallow tube well pumps in a deep well pump area. So the deep well pumps are disappearing. They're really going down.
Yeah, very
Sarah.
underutilized.
Underutilized, totally underutilized. Okay, so.
Anyway, we can share, if you're doing work
Yeah.
there, we can share with you the latest evaluation of the deep well pumps, where I saw out of the 72, only 15 is fully operational. The rest are partial or not operational. So I think it's really going to go out of this.
Okay, we better go to
Yeah.
science city.
Good, we have- So you're doing work on the impact of AWD on what are the constraints in that?
Yeah, and how to facilitate adoption of AWD among farmers.
Well, actually, we did a study on one of the digital pumps in Central Zone in Gimba. It was sort of a study. Then it was actually in the 1970s, so I don't know whether it's still relevant to this discussion. But during that time, actually, we tried to increase the efficiency of pumping so that it could be actually what the saved water could be used for other crops like corn, not really for household. So, and I think during that time, the price of gasoline or fuel, as we call it, is low. And during that, also the pump is managed communally, so it's not so more or less deadly success.
Tony's talking about another field trip that he and I took, right? You and I took a field trip to that area,
to that area.
and that was a long time ago.
Yeah, my impression are the deep well projects of have been basically failures. I think basically, you know. And I was wondering why the Solana, where we went. Why is it the Solana irrigation system, which is a pump system, has survived and appears to be doing okay. Okay. So to me, it just opened my mind because there, the pumps are used to pump water from the Cagayan River. Not really. So I think the cost of producing that water for farmers are really lower than in others. I'm very interested in this, not because I believe that it's going to go out of business, but because the government still, borrowed money because the Chinese, as usual, would, offer you anything free, low cost interest. And we're investing, we have a new set of deep well pumps in Ilocos, funded by the Chinese. So to me, it will be interesting to sort of, I'm skeptical about it, but who knows, maybe the Chinese are better in this, and therefore we need to see why, deep wells have basically died in many areas, but survived in Solana. And what is it? Is it going to survive in Ilocos Norte, in Banawa, system? So that's why I told Randy, we still have to look at it.
I think, Tina, one big difference is that the Solana is managed by NIA. The deep well in Tarlac was eventually turned over to the farmers or the cooperatives. So it died down naturally because of the fuel cost and then the management problem. So if there is a change in leadership, it's good if the farmer leader is good. But once the farmer leader changes, and the farmer leader who take over is not good or doesn't get the cooperation of the farmer, then it died down naturally.
No, but the question is it really leadership or the size of subsidy? Okay. Perhaps,
and then partly also
but
the
my guess
subsidy.
it's both the fact that the cost of pumping in using the Cagayan River is lower than
it's
near deep wells. One. Second is there may be still subsidies on the operation and maintenance in the operated systems, whereas there is none or less.
In my study also before, deep well is really the most costly
Yeah, it's most costly. And a lot
compared
of them
to
really-
surface water.
Let's switch, and I'm suggesting, we haven't got much time, and so I'd like to talk a little bit about hybrid rice, because I think this is an area, Tina and I have been noted for being rather negative about hybrid rice. What's happening in hybrid rice is quite interesting, because most of the people that we saw growing hybrid rice, and there were quite a few. We're growing a variety called SL8, which is a variety that has higher yield but very poor quality. It sells for about 10% below the other varieties of rice. But in the pipeline, there are lots of varieties that look very promising, including the Caesar varieties from Bill Rice. And you know, I sat down one night with a guy that I've never met, because what I do is when I go to, say, the cafeteria and Bill Rice, I don't know anybody. I just say, what are you doing? This guy was a cooperative manager, the head of a cooperative, and he had 2 hectares of rice, and he had 6 varieties of hybrid rice, and he told me the best variety was Pioneer or something like that. But what I'm saying to you is I think that in a few years, they will overcome some of the constraints in terms of quality, in terms of heterosis, in terms of disease and insect problems, that probably will give a boost to hybrid rice. But I don't think hybrids will ever be more than maybe, I don't know, 10, 15%, 10 to 15%. But it's an interesting area, and of course, IRRI hosts the Hybrid Rice Consortium, and you know, again, I was interested, so I went to the Hybrid Rice Consortium, and that's how I heard Adam talk about, that's how I feel about what he was doing. You don't know. You go someplace, you think you're going to hear about hybrid rice, and then Adam shows up, and you learn about what the GIS people are doing. See? You've got to move around, get out of this building. Get out of this building, and just go over to someplace else and walk into a meeting and you don't ask to be invited. It's just a lot you can learn. I even track over the other area, and I know I'm the only one that's walking this way, but people say, oh, I see you walking this way. There's nobody else walking over that way. So anyway, the hybrid rice, let's see what else we got on here. We visited 2 farmers associations, and these were quite interesting because they were very different. We purposely picked a farmer association that was doing well and a farmer association that was doing badly. When I say badly, it means that the feed collections were low and they weren't doing much in maintaining the system. We went first to the we went first to the unfavorable people that were doing badly. So it was an interesting group of people. Actually, the people that were doing badly were, number one, they were at the head of the system, so they got water whether they did anything or not. Which is one of the problems if you understand the structure of the system. Somebody was mentioning the head tail. That where you are in the system makes a lot of difference about your motivation to do something and participate and so forth. So the people at the head of the system, they're sometimes less likely to pay the fee. And it's the same thing that the always tells me about Pleasant Village. It's the wealthy people over there that don't pay. I don't know. So anyway, it's interesting that this group actually were people that some of them were professors at CLSU. They were pretty well educated group. But for one reason or another, they hadn't gotten their act together. And it was interesting because they were in what we call stage 1 of, NIA, which means that NIA was actually positioning then we went to the progressive area, which was in Division 5, which I mentioned it briefly. But these guys, I mean, the whole attitude was just different. Right? I mean, in terms of they're willing to, you know, participate in their relationship with Nina and so forth like that. It's just totally different. And you know, it's you see that all, you know, everywhere. I mean, it's hard to predict in terms of that, but there's some things we can learn about, you know, water management. And one of the big issues that is difficult to solve in the Philippines is effort. That is to say, doing something for the head of the system that with the tail of the system that won't hurt the head of the system. And it's easy to do that. And in fact, Pi and K started off in Central LUZON to do just that. With all the money to dry and stuff like that. They were going to do something for the tail of the system. And I said to them, I said, no, I don't think the politics has changed in Central LUZON. And then about a month or two later, she said, I think you're right, we're moving to the hole. And so they went to the hole. Because they couldn't do what was obviously to be done in Central LUZON because the politics was wrong. I mean, the guys at the head of the system were controlling the water, and they were the cattle system. So if you don't have that kind of attitude and culture, it's really hard to see. One of the problems that we face is one thing to say that we're doing research to improve irrigation management and so forth, but sometimes you run across a block. You can't do anything for the tail of the system. So what do? Now, what the tailenders do is they buy a pump.
Right.
And then they buy a pump so that they can get water where they used to get water before. What?
Sorry. Yeah. Time flies so fast. So, do you have some questions before we end this session? If none, actually, I'd like to thank Dr. Randy Barker and Dr. Tina Delfrid for sharing your project and sharing their thoughts and their stories, and also for their advices. And please join us.